Councilmember McMahon,
Here.
Councilmember Hales,
Here.
Councilmember Fuller,
Here. One more. Did you say Mayor Pro Tem?
yeah, Mayor Pro Tem, I'm sorry.
Here. Okay, so now we're at approval of the agenda. Mr. Rose.
Mayor Pro Tem Smotherson and council members, I would recommend tabling items L2 at the request of the applicant. And the companion item, I would simply recommend tabling as well. That would be item M2. Those are all the changes I would recommend to the agenda.
Okay, is there a motion to so moved? That's Councilmember Hales. Is there a second? Councilmember McMahon, it's a second. And with this, is there any discussion? Be no discussion. Is this a roll call or just a voice vote? All those in favor of the amended motion for the agenda, say aye. Any nays? No nays. The ayes have it. So we now have an amended agenda, and I hope everyone understood that. What actually is happening is that L2, the CUP 22-13 is being removed from the agenda tonight, and that also includes bill number 9513, if I have that correct. Okay, so now may I get a motion to approve the amended agenda as is? Councilmember McMahon, can I get a second? Councilmember Hales. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Any nays? No, and the ayes have it. We have no proclamations, approval of minutes, none, appointments to boards and commission. John Tiemann is nominated to the Historic Preservation Commission as a fill-in by Mayor Terry Crow. May I get a second on that nomination? Second by Stacey Clay. Any discussion on that? No discussion. All those in favor say aye. Any nays? No. And the ayes have it. Swearing in to the boards and commissions, Tim Schrader was sworn in at the Urban Forestry meeting on May 10th, 2023. And then we also have Christopher, and I'm saying it's Lumtech, like Lotech. Okay. Was sworn into the senior commission in the clerk's office on May 11th, 2023. We're now at citizen comments. And what I wanted to let you know is that the items that for items under the city manager report L2 and 9513, I'm going to wait to have you speak at that time, even though it's been removed from the agenda. And that's simply because I've got 3 citizen comments for this period right here, and that's only 15 minutes, and I want to allow them that 5 minutes to speak. So we're now at citizen comments, and I just simply wanted to say, if you want to request to address the council, forms are located on the ledge just inside the entrance. Please complete and place the form in the basket at the front of the room if you want to actually speak. And we'll start with, is it Sam Washington? Is that correct? Mr. Washington, please say your name and address, please.
I see. Sam Washington. I live at 8669 Spoon Drive. My question is got to do with the river repair. For the last 20-some years in the front, the debris has been over the sidewalk into the streets. Fortunately, Ms. Bonds lived next door to me. She had been calling a while, and we finally got somebody out. And I think it was the head of public works. His name is start with a J. I'm bad with names. But I'd like to thank him because he came by Tuesday, Friday, they cut it down. Monday, today, they picked it up. But I've still got another concern because the overage growth is all on the side. It's about a foot away from my house. And if you look at the plot plan, it really doesn't show river repair at all. It's like it don't exist. And someone mentioned to me it's possible that maybe my property line real halfway down the middle of the river repair and the other property line had other river, part of river repair. And then my question is, how could I own part of river repair? Because the fellow mentioned that he could not address that side. He only had to address the front. And if you could point me to who I need to talk to or point to who I need to talk to me, I'd like to know how I only could own part of river repair and to do something to get some of that debris cut. And like I said, it's been 20 years or more really to get that front done. And there's also even the when it leaves. And I'll say as long as I've been there, I saw a fellow come by there once to rake the leaves. But I'm glad to, like I said, the director, people did come out, they cut the front, they got all the stuff up to date, except for the leaves, but he told me he'd get those up after he got the debris out. But now my question is, the stuff that's growing, you know, when I walk past my house, I'm walking into overage from the river repair. And again, I was informed it's possible that my property line runs through the river repair. And then again, my question is, how can I own part of river repair? And
I'm going to have Mr. Rose address that for you.
Sure. We have the Director for Public Works, Darren Girdler, in the back, as well as the Director for Parks and Recreation. I believe the gentleman that you were referencing was Jacob,
right?
Kaiser.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that both or one of them will be able to assist you in addressing your question.
And you said they're in the back.
They're right back there.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Next, we have Tom Sullivan.
Tom Sullivan, 751 Syracuse. I again want to point out the streets in the North Loop are not being swept as they should, mainly because there are too many cars in the way. Residents don't pay attention to the signs and sweeping times start too early, 8 a.m. Moving up the time to 9 or 10 a.m. would mean fewer cars blocking the sweepers. But what really is needed is a better way to notify people about sweeping days. There are various streetlights out around the city. There are 3 overhead streetlights out in the number 4 parking lot. One is by Kingsland and the other 2 are on the south end of the lot. There are 2 walkways through the number 4 lot. Each has low-level lights to light the walk. 1 light is out in each walkway. One is now damaged as it seems it was run into. A street light is out on Loop North near Heman. There's a street light out around 815 Leland. There's a street light out on Vernon just west of Kingsland. A street light is out at Ursula and Carbet. Street light is out on Ferguson north of Olive. There are several street lights out on Olive. There's a light out on Wellington off Midland Drive. There's a light out on Chamberlain across from the newly dedicated Shelley Welsh Park. Street light is in front of a boarded up home. The home next to it has weeds several feet tall. A house several doors east is vacant and has a front porch missing. It seems the block is in pretty rough shape. These and other problems in the 3rd Ward will no doubt be fixed when all that Costco money comes rolling in. Also across the alley from the park, there's about an 8-foot length of gutter hanging down from the garage. City inspectors seems to have missed it. At the April 24th City Council meeting, Councilman McMahon had several comments having to do with me. He claimed that I said he and other members of the council were being investigated by the FBI. Also that I said the Attorney General and the Bar Association were investigating members of the council. I asked Councilman McMahon if he could point out where I said these things, as I can't find anywhere that I have. He is apparently unable to. I have not heard back from him. But Councilman McMahon really went into the twilight zone when he said that someone is driving through his neighborhood, stopping at his house and others, saying the FBI was out to get him. The councilman said his family's safety had become an issue, supposedly based on something I said, or more accurately, something I didn't say. If this were really the case, I suggested he would have filed a police report. It would presumably include a description of the person in his car and just what threats were made. It seemed Councilman McMahon had a conversation with this threatening person. So I would like to see any police report that Councilman McMahon has filed, and also like to know just when I said all the things he claimed I said. Thank you for listening to my comments.
Next is Mr. Gerald Tears.
Gerald Tiers, 7345 Chamberlain. Thank you. In the 4/04/24/2023 council meeting, Councilmember McMahon responded to a comment by Tom Sullivan about Councilmember McMahon's questions when interviewing me, saying, I quote, "I think the question you thought was a gotcha question was about whether Mr. Tiers had donated money to the campaign." This being the Prop F, anti-Prop F. And so I looked it up that night on my phone, and his name is, he did donate to it, although he denied it. Note that. So I guess you are supporting someone who had just bold-faced lied right here when asked a really simple question, quote, "Did you donate?" unquote. That was his statement. Councilman McMahon called me a bold-faced liar. He did so in a legally public forum. I suggest that the official video recording of his original question does not support what appears to be a deliberate statement which is damaging to my reputation. Saying that I bold-faced lied seems a rather thoughtless statement for a sitting member of this council to make, particularly when the recording does not appear to support him. Does this entire council agree with his lie statement, or was that his individual personal statement? I'm not an attorney. I retain attorneys when they are needed. Councilmember McMahon, however, is an attorney. He should know whether his council comment statement calling me a liar was made in the ordinary course of his legitimate city duties or as an individual. When reviewing the official video recording of the interview session, I found that it shows something quite different from what Councilmember McMahon stated. It shows that Councilmember McMahon said the following, which I quote, "You weren't working alone, Mr. Tiers. You were involved with a campaign effort you donated money to and worked with to get out signs and information. It wasn't just you with a couple next door comments. Am I right on that?" unquote. I replied that he was wrong and pointed out his mistake, stating truthfully that I had not worked with any campaign effort. Councilmember McMahon stated in his comment that I was asked a really simple question: did you donate? In fact, as anyone can see, he never asked such a question. The only relevant question asked was the long question quoted above about being involved with the campaign effort and working with that group to get out signs and information. I had not done those things, but I did donate $50 to that campaign. Councilmember McMahon was free to ask me directly if I had donated. He chose not to do so. How then does he now claim that I denied donating and bold-faced lied when asked a really simple question? That claim appears to be completely untrue. The relevant question and reply can be found at approximately 1 hour and 16 minutes into the official video recording from the special 03/06/2023 meeting. It is, or at least it was at last check, freely available on the U City official YouTube live channel for anyone to see, listen to, and find out the truth. Councilmember McMahon's lie statement can be found at approximately 12 minutes and 15 seconds into the official 04/24/2023 recording, again, open to anybody to check. I respectfully suggest to Councilmember McMahon that he, as an honorable man, owes me, owes the council, and in fact owes us all a public apology for his harmful statement and a retraction of the claim that I lied. This council meeting would be a very good time for that apology and retraction to be made. Thank you.
Okay, we'll now move forward with council. Are there any council comments? Councilmember McMahon.
I think the answer that you gave, Mr. Tiers, was specifically, you said, when I asked if you donated, which you acknowledged right now that that was part of the question, you said, not that I'm aware. And then tonight you just said you're aware that you donated $50. Whether or not that's accurate, that's what it says in the video. Not that I'm aware that I donated. Well, okay. You just told us tonight you were aware that you donated. The MEC report says you donated. So there you go. And now it seems like folks that have lots of comments, but now to address Mr. Sullivan, it seems like he wants to tell us, how do I want the FBI involved in investigating elected officials without saying FBI? That's kind of what we're looking at here. Mr. Sullivan sent into council some allegations and compared me and said about me that I should be treated as a corrupt public official. And then he went on and compared me to William Webster, who had used state resources for his own campaign and state resources for a babysitter. And then he went on to compare me to Steve Stenger, which his indictment says he had a scheme to secretly use his official position to enrich himself through soliciting and accepting campaign contributions. And then he went on to say that this should be dealt with as a federal crime. And he said, I will be filing complaints with the Ethics Commission again, but also will get federal authorities involved. So someone has to ask, if you're getting federal authorities involved to look into public corruption, what federal body would do that? OSHA? I don't think so. I don't think it's OSHA. Maybe the Parks Department. Maybe there's a federal agency, or maybe it's called a bureau. A federal bureau that would investigate public corruption. Maybe that's what we're talking about when Mr. Sullivan is making accusations that there would be a federal crime. And then he went on in the same email that's part of the public record to indicate that I willfully violated laws that I took an oath to support, and so I should lose my law license. Well, who would look into losing my law license but the bar? But he's saying, well, that didn't happen. But you promised, Mr. Sullivan promised that he was going to be filing these things with the bar. He would have the Attorney General look into things. He'd have the federal authorities involved, that this is the equivalent of a federal crime. And those are the kind of things he was saying. He says, I can't point this out. He also points out, and he tries to make a comparison to a speaker in the General Assembly of Wisconsin. And Mr. Sullivan says he was convicted and sentenced to federal prison for 15 years. That never happened. Scott Jensen pled guilty to a state crime in Dane County, Wisconsin. There was no federal crime involved. There was no final conviction. He pled guilty and paid a fine. But why? So you have to ask yourself, why does Mr. Sullivan say these kind of things in order to harm people? If he has a disagreement, if we spent money, we say on Prop F, we had information. He says it's advocacy, but yet he comes out and wants to say that these are federal crimes. We're all corrupt, compares us to Steve Stenger. You just have to ask, why does it get to that level? Why does it get to that point where you have to compare things to, and really just say things that didn't even happen? There was no federal crime that the speaker in Wisconsin was charged with. It just didn't happen. He also mentioned in that same letter that I had willfully violated the law. Yet in the lawsuit that he filed in St. Louis County on the same issue, they specifically avoid saying that there was anything willful. That's not part of their claim that they're suing the city's using taxpayer dollars to defend. Nothing about willful. And even if what Mr. Sullivan is claiming, that was a willful violation of that statute regarding advocacy on ballot measures, it's a misdemeanor. It's not a federal crime. It had a 1-year statute of limitations that's passed. There isn't a prosecutor that would come around and even touch it. And they didn't, obviously. But that's what he throws out there. And then he comes and says, well, if you didn't file a police report, these things must not have happened. I'm not going to tell Mr. Sullivan which neighbors, because I don't want him then talking to them about or bringing them into this kind of stuff. It's enough that you want to poke at me, fine. If you can't, and you believe that that's necessary, all my comments were on that night was I was asking for some human decency. Just dial it back a little bit. If that's not possible, then don't do it. Continue on. Go ahead. Tell me I've violated federal law. Tell me I'm corrupt like Steve Stenger. Tell me that I violated a federal law like Scott Jensen, who never did, that was never convicted of it. Go ahead, say all those things. That's fine. I was just asking, maybe you could back it up, just dial it down a little bit. But if you can't, be who you are. Be proud of it. Go ahead.
Any other comments? Yes, sir, Mr. Fuller.
I'd like to mention that my Ward 2 colleague, Anita Klein, this evening is at University City High School celebrating her son's graduation. So I think congratulations are in order for our high school graduation tonight.
Thank you. That is. Any other comments? Being no other comments, we'll move on to public hearings, which we have none, and we move forward with the consent agenda. May I get a motion to approve monument dedication and donation policy? That's by Councilmember McMahon and second by Councilmember Clay. Any discussion? No discussion. All those in favor say aye. Any nays? No nays, and the ayes have it. We move on to the amended city manager's report, and I turn it over to Mr. Rose.
Mayor Pro Tem Smotherson, council members, this agenda item asks that you receive a presentation from our finance director, Keith Cole, on the FY 23 third quarter financial report. Mr. Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Rose. I'm a Mayor Pro Tem and members of council. This evening, I'll be presenting the third quarter financial report as of March 31st, 2023. And just for time limits, and I'm going to just review several of the funds that we have. And the first one's the general fund, the revenues. Our adjusted budget is 23.8 million, and our year-to-date actual is 17.251 million. And as actual as a percent of the adjusted budget, it's 72.4%. And that is 1.3 million increase compared to the same quarter as of FY 22. And the key points from here on the increase is that the sales and use tax taxes have increased roughly 417,000, and that's from the 1% pool tax. The service charges roughly increased 180,000, or 23.6%. There was a decrease in on the municipal court and parking, roughly of 135,000. There's decrease of miscellaneous revenue of roughly 237,000. We had an increase property taxes of roughly 238,000. Increase in gross receipt taxes of roughly 155,000. Increase in intergovernmental tax of roughly 221,000. Increase in its inspection fees and permits of roughly 142,000. And we had an increase in grants year to date of roughly 341,000. And overall, the revenues as a percent of our budget increased 8.1%. For the general fund expenditures, we had an adjusted budget of 31.9 million, our year-to-date actual is 22.2 million. And as a percent of the actual is 69.7%. And we had an increase of almost 5 million compared to the same quarter of FY 22. And the increase, it's mainly due to of our flood loss from our equipment and vehicles. And that was roughly year to date, it's 3.5 million. And we had an increase in expenditures in the fire department, also with some flood related expenditures. And we entered in a contract with the Central County Emergency 911 and some other departments, communications, plan and development, parks and rec, just had some increases in personnel fee costs. And the overall expenditures as a percent of the budget increased 5.9% compared to the same quarter of FY 22. Our next fund, it's the capital improvement sales tax revenues. We have an adjusted budget of 2.5 million. The year-to-date actual is 1,571,385, and that is an actual as a percent of 62.8%. And that's a small increase of 32,812 compared to the same quarter of FY 22. The sales tax revenue for that increased roughly 2.1%. And just as a reminder, the capital improvement sales tax, it's the tax revenues generated by per capita. Yes. Capital improvement sales tax, the expenditures, we had an adjusted budget of 2.19 million. Year-to-date actual is 295,583. And that consists of 3.5% of the adjusted budget. And we have a decrease of 265,326. And the decrease here is mainly that just timing issues with of the construction and street projects. Some of those have been scheduled to begin in the fourth quarter of FY 23. Park and stormwater sales tax revenue, we have an adjusted budget of 1.3 million. Year-to-date actual is 949,561. And this consists of 71.9% of the adjusted budget. This was an increase of 162,494. The revenue increase for the third quarter of 20.6% compared to the same quarter of FY 22. And the park and stormwater sales tax is generated by point of sale. The park and stormwater sales tax expenditures, we have an adjusted budget of 1.7 million. The year-to-date actual is 459,633. This is 26.9% of the adjusted budget. And we have a decrease of 46,153. And again, this is timing issues and some of the capital projects on that hasn't started, potentially start in the fourth quarter. And the public safety sales tax revenues, the adjusted budget, it's 2,001,000. The year-to-date actual is 1.3 million. This is 65.2% of the adjusted budget. And we have a $55,242 increase compared to same quarter as FY 22. So the revenue here increased roughly 4.4% from the third quarter of FY 22. And the sales tax revenues generated by the per capita. And public safety sales tax expenditures, just a budget is 440,195. Our year-to-date actual is 195,944. And this represents 44.5% of the adjusted budget. And we have a decrease thus far, 527,309. And this is mainly due to the initial cost design fees for the Annex Trinity renovation project. And I'm open for any questions that y'all have.
Councilmember Clay.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Smotherson. Thank you for the presentation. Had a question, a specific question about general fund expenditures, the 3.5 million roughly we spent to replace flood damaged vehicles. That will be reimbursed, correct?
We are in the with portion of it, like 75% of the fees that the expenditures have lost due to the flood that we sent to FEMA, and the reimbursement is 75% of the loss.
Okay, so everything goes according to plan. We should be getting 75% of this 3.5 million back at it's
Correct.
federal government. So at some point,
Correct.
at some point. Okay.
Councilmember Clay, if I could just add on to what our finance director has indicated, it really depends. The reimbursements are from federal government, well, through SEMA from FEMA. But included in that is a great deal of equipment, and we may not get 75% of that reimbursed. That depends upon our insurance company. I think what we're asking for is for FEMA to include that as a reimbursement to try and make us whole. But the one factor that influences that is we are purchasing new equipment, and what was totaled was old equipment. So they may give us the full cost of the old equipment, but the new equipment could be much more expensive. So we won't necessarily get 75% of our expenditures back. But we can provide you with an update that indicates the amount that we're receiving once we've received it.
And correct. And I could be getting this wrong. Certainly would not be the first time, but it was my impression that first responder vehicles, there was guidance given from FEMA, SEMA, whomever, like go ahead and replace those because we know you need them. Just do it. We'll figure it out on the back end. Some of the other things that they might argue are more discretionary. We know we have to go through a rather laborious process that is still going on and like will be going on for some time. But do we feel good? Like, even if we get it at the value of the replaced vehicles, do we feel good we'll get those, at least those monies back?
I believe that we provided them with all of the documentation that's needed to confirm, why the vehicles or equipment was totaled, and they're in the review process now. So far, it looks very positive for us. I think that they've been understanding and of what occurred during the flood. They came out and saw the equipment firsthand. So I feel good from that perspective that they have all of the information that they need to have in order to make a decision. I'm certainly hopeful that they will give us the market value for all of the equipment, but there's never a guarantee.
Understood on that. And thank you. Director Cole, one final question. You're seasoned in your role. So let me ask you this. How do you feel about, we know we've been dealing with the influences of inflation and other kind of banking, other economic travails. How are you feeling about our revenues going into the fourth quarter and or we're in the fourth quarter, and as we move into next year, how are you feeling overall about the financial health of the city?
Feeling good, but always on cautious to be conservative. My feel it's always take a conservative approach. Because we don't know what could happen down the road. But I feel good with the new project at Olive and 170. Some of the with the revenue coming in there, I think that's a positive flow. So I'm optimistic about that. And I mean, I always, when you have your sales tax, it's per capita, or your sales tax with the point of sale, usually, having with the per capita, that always benefits. And you're kind of a little concerned with the point of sale, but I'm always trying to be optimistic that with the economy and that, it will start to turn around and people will come back and make purchases, and that will help out. So I'm conservative, but always have a, optimistic approach to hopefully the revenues will, come into what we've budgeted.
Thank you. Mayor, one final question. I
No
apologize. Do we have a sense, I know it's very early, recreational marijuana, 3% tax, what that might look like on an annualized basis, or is it just too early to tell?
I think it's too early to tell
Okay.
because
Fair enough.
I don't think the tax won't start till October
Okay.
1. And I think it's just too early to.
So we don't know what their revenues look like, which we would be getting the 3% of. We don't have a sense of that yet.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? No other questions. We'll move forward with the, so Mr. Rose, does this require a vote of approval? Or is that the report?
This item does not require a vote.
Okay.
But there's a companion resolution that Mr. Cole will speak to a little later.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, we'll move on to unfinished business. And Ms. Reed, can we have the second reading of bill number 9512? Sorry. L2 was moved. I'm gonna do that when we introduce when 9513 at that slot. Yeah, I'm just gonna do it at that slot.
Bill 9512, an ordinance fixing the compensation to be paid to city officials and employees as enumerated therein from and after passage, and repealing ordinance number 7186.
Third reading, please.
Bill 9512, an ordinance fixing the compensation to be paid to city officials and employees as enumerated herein from and after passage, and repealing ordinance number 7186.
Can I get a motion to approve? Councilman Hales, second, Councilman Clay. Any discussion? No discussion. Ms. Reese, would you call the roll?
Councilmember McMahon,
Aye.
Councilmember Hales,
All right.
Councilmember Fuller,
Aye.
Councilmember Clay,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Smotherson.
Aye. Okay, at this time, we've removed Bill 9513, and that actually is going to be put on hold. So I just wanted to let you know, but at the same time, I am still going to call names of those that actually wanted to comment or citizen comments. And I wanted to let you know you can decline or you can come up and speak. So I'm going to call your name. Okay. Here we go. First one I'm calling is, I'm not sure how to read it, is Roy Decker. Is that correct? Because I can't read the writing. And please, Ruby Decker. Okay, I couldn't read the.
That's okay. Nobody can read my handwriting. Ruth Decker, 6900 Washington Avenue.
Thank you.
I just want to clarify, there's been some mischaracterization by some of the neighbors of our posture with regard to WashU's acquisition of 6901 Washington. That's the church. Just want to make clear that we are not advocating opposition to the purchase. However, homeowners' concerns, particularly those of the close proximity to the properties, must be addressed for us to live in harmony with Washington University. And specifically, that includes observing boundaries between homeowners and students. And hence, for reasons of safety and traffic management, parking, we are seeking assurances from the university that they will respond to address this issue to the satisfaction of all stakeholders. In particular, we would appreciate if the council would help us in this effort. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll have Sarah Oldham. And remember your name and address, please.
My name is Sarah Oldham, 6905 Washington Avenue. I live immediately west of University United Methodist Church. My husband and I support WashU's purchase of UUM. However, we have valid concerns that first of all relate to our property and its close proximity to the building. Secondly, we have broader concerns that are shared by many of our neighbors. These include noise, lighting, loss of green space, and more. Illegal parking is one of our major concerns, and we feel a gate is necessary to ensure safety, convenience, aesthetics, property values, and flexibility. WashU has graciously met with us to discuss these concerns, and we trust they are negotiating with us in good faith. We look forward to reaching solutions we can all live with and that ensure the integrity, the beauty, and the safety of our neighborhood. And this will also help WashU be the good neighbor that they absolutely want to be. I thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll have Ben Ellerman.
Ben Ellerman, 6911 Washington Avenue. I wanted to thank our Ward 1 council members for looking into issues relating to the traffic study and the density of the use, and we really appreciate your efforts in that matter. And we hope that you'll continue to do so. We do think that that this kind of the separation between the students and the neighborhood, to preserve the neighborhood, a gate really is the best solution. So neither side, nobody has to police the street. It's a clear separation between the university. And it's even something that our trustees mentioned in I think in attachment D, is that's one of the things that they're requesting in writing for that. We did have a question though, because we understand this project's going back to HPC for things like landscape plan and for signage. We were wondering at what level do things like the privacy, like HVAC noise, window changes, things like that, does that come back to the council or does HPC address it? So that is something we wanted to follow up with the council to see how that's handled. We also wanted to pass along that there is that a lot of the neighbors are concerned about the loss of green space for the parking lot, and any efforts to help mitigate that even partially would be greatly appreciated. And in terms of the parking lot, we've also heard that a number of neighbors are concerned about that being a public lot for overnight parking. And we're wondering if perhaps maybe those hours could be limited to a time that maybe could still be used by the Coca and the music building for evenings, maybe to like 11 p.m. or sometime a reasonable time, and then not be used for overnight parking. And I really appreciate the council listening to us. We're looking forward to WashU purchasing these buildings, and hopefully they can be a good partner with us and everything will work out the best for everyone. And I appreciate your efforts. Thank you.
Next, we'll have John Oldham. Oh, okay, all right. I'll move on. And is this this Goose or Gauss? Gauss. Okay, I'm sorry. I can't.
I would answer Goose, but it is Goss.
Okay, Gauss. Okay, thank you. And your address, please.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council, my name is Brad Goss. My address is 120 South Central, Suite 700, Clayton, Missouri, and I represent a number of the homeowners on Washington Avenue who I know have been talking to the council. And I want to echo their thanks to the council members for spending the time with them, and also thank WashU for having met with us and spending the time with us to talk about our concerns. And we have not reached agreement. We haven't worked all of those through, but I'm I'm optimistic that hopefully we will get there and be able to resolve those concerns. Now, earlier, and this is in attachment D, back in April, one of the trustees for the subdivision, Ms. Slapshack, had submitted an email to the city asking that the city specifically look at issues with respect to parking on Washington Avenue. And she noted that there needed to be an agreed upon plan of action. And I was at the council meeting, I guess, 2 weeks ago, when I think it was Councilman Hale brought up the fact that there needs to be a traffic solution relating to WashU and the students, and you're sending it back to the Traffic Commission, if I recall correctly. And that parking is an issue, and that you are wanting to have further regulation relating to parking and parking stickers and that sort of thing. And that's something that she's asking for in this email, either a solution that involves WashU providing security patrolling on the street 24/7, or an electronic gate, or residential parking stickers, but some solution that specifically addresses this. And currently that's not part of the conditional use permit. I'm not sure that HPC, if it goes back to them, that they really have the authority to address that. And rather it may need to go back to the Planning and Zoning Commission or to the Traffic Commission. You would know better than I would which commission should consider that, but we would like that to go to the proper commission so that it can be considered, as opposed to if HPC says, well, that's really not part of our portfolio, then we wouldn't be able to have that issue considered. There's also issues raised by the trustee regarding outdoor lighting and noise, specifically with respect to the HVAC and security issues. And she had asked for an exact diagram and a commitment in writing from WashU with respect to those matters. Again, that's something that your code really provides for as part of the conditional use permit process, that those details should have come to the Planning and Zoning Commission, but they didn't. And instead, it's now before you tonight, or will be 2 weeks from now when you consider it. Again, we would like those specifics to be considered by the appropriate body and to be addressed, so that there is a real plan for noise and lighting and security, and have those items specified in the conditional use permit. Finally, I do want to thank the council for adding conditions 8 and 9 to the conditional use permit. We think those are very positive in that they are addressing the traffic impact study that the university has submitted, and asking the university to hold itself to that standard. And we think that makes a lot of sense. And we also agree with the idea that that should be verified. So again, I want to thank you for your efforts on behalf of the residents. Thank you.
And last, we'll have Mr. Patrick Fox.
I'll be brief. I actually plan on discussing it when you actually are voting on it, if that's okay. However, I would encourage you to revisit item K1 on the agenda, because I think it was skipped over. And as someone who helped contribute to that, I really would appreciate it for consideration. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir. Let's move on to bill number 9515. May I get the second reading, Ms. Reese?
Bill 9515, an ordinance amending Schedule 3, Table 3-A of the Traffic Code of the University City Municipal Code relating to parking prohibited on certain streets during designated hours by adding therein the north side of Pershing Avenue from Rossi Avenue to a point 325 feet to the west.
A third reading, please.
Bill 9515, an ordinance amending Schedule 3, Table 3-A of the Traffic Code of the University City Municipal Code relating to parking prohibited on certain streets during designated hours by adding therein the north side of Pershing Avenue from Rossi Avenue to a point 325 feet to the west.
May I get a motion to approve? Mr. Fuller and Councilmember Clay is the second. Any discussion? No discussion. Ms. Reese, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Fuller.
Aye.
Councilmember Clay.
Aye.
Councilmember McMahon.
Aye.
Councilmember Hales.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Smotherson.
Aye. All right, thank you. We will move on to new business, and that's resolution. May I get a motion to approve resolution 2023 dash, and is that dash 10, I believe? Is that fiscal year 2022-23 budget amendment number 4? Motion by Councilmember Clay, second, Mr. Councilman Hales. Any discussion? No discussion. All those in favor say aye. Any nays? No nays. The ayes have it. And no bills to introduce. So now we're at council reports and businesses. Any council member with any reports? Mr. McMahon.
Mr. Fox had mentioned the monuments, and they did do a great job of putting that together. It was kind of on short notice. Mr. Fox specifically was very instrumental in making some tweaks to it and also working with the residents on trying to get the timeline through. So the Parks Commission that Mr. Fox sits on did a great job putting that together. It's a new policy to kind of give us guidance in the future and do it in a way that's fair to anybody who may want a monument or something that recognizes somebody in the parks system. So just to recognize that. And also in a way related to that was the ceremony on Saturday where the Mayor Shelley Walsh Park was named the old now former Kingsland Park. And it was a great day, great turnout. The folks from the Centennial Committee were a great number in attendance. A lot of folks from the Parks Commission were there as well. And it was just a nice ceremony. And I just wanted to mention that as well.
Councilmember Clay.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Smotherson. And to follow up on Councilmember McMahon's comments, we did vote for the monuments. We passed that, correct? Yeah, we did. We got you. Reporting on the library board, as some in the audience may know, there has been, shall we say, some machinations happening at the state level related to libraries and funding and what libraries can and cannot display on their shelves and make available to their citizens. It seems that at least for now, one aspect of this, which was the threat to withhold funding from libraries, that crisis has been averted. So the funding for libraries, well, many would say not adequate, has not been injured. They're pretty much at the same place they were or would have been. So that's positive news. It seems some of the more draconian elements of what I, Stacey Clay, not necessarily representing council, will say was book banning, seem to not be in effect. So a good day for those who value libraries and the services and the books that they offer.
Councilmember Fuller.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. This is indirectly additional information to the Washington Avenue discussion coming out of Traffic Commission, which I was the commissioner at the time this was discussed. The aspects of parking in front of the purchase of the church as well as Washington Avenue has been addressed and was suggested to the parties that were present at the last special meeting that we had, which was in fact discussing the whole parking situation on the green, and those notes are available. And I mean, there are all sorts of suggestions there that could be enacted by the by the subdivision. And so not contrary to what the attorney just spoke about, those were addressed, and we'd be willing to address them again if that's a problem. Now, just pointing that out. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments? With that being said, Ms. Reese, are there any citizens that request to speak?
None at this time.
Thank you. Council comments. Mr. Hales.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify something that was said earlier related to the CUP and traffic and sending it back to the Traffic Commission. In the last meeting, the motion that I made to send an item back to the Traffic Commission had nothing to do with this area, a totally different neighborhood. And it was just completely unrelated. So I didn't want there to be confusion for anybody watching or anybody in the room. It was wholly unrelated to this particular item. And but I do appreciate the comments. Steve and I have spent a great deal of time on this over the last, I think we're at 8 months since we first heard of it. So, and I do think there's been an incredibly robust process of public engagement. The very first thing Steve and I asked was for WashU to make outreach to the neighborhoods, which is not necessarily something they have to do, but something they absolutely should do. So that's really all my comments. Thank you.
Mr. Clay.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Smollerson. On a personal note, that will in fact impact my service on the council to a small degree. Wife is pregnant, having a baby. So due in the beginning of June. So I will be absent from the June 8th meeting. I believe that is the only meeting that will be impacted. I will certainly communicate to my council colleagues and to the third ward via newsletter if there's going to be impact for me beyond the June 8th meeting, but don't call me then because I won't answer. All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. All right, do we have a closed session? We do not. Okay, may I get a motion? It looks like that's it. May I get a motion to adjourn? By Councilmember Hales. A second is Mr. Fuller. And any discussion? No discussion. All those in favor say aye. Any nays? No nays, and the ayes have it. Have a wonderful evening, everyone. Well.